This recorded. This on Facebook. One more second. I'll do this. Okay, I'm gonna start in a minute. And we are ready. As Hashem is Baruch. Okay. The Seder. Okay, so B'siyata D'Shmaya, that as Hashem, we're going to continue our series, The Inner Dimension of Shabbos. And we do hope that everybody had a very happy, beautiful, amazing Purim. It was wonderful to see some of you. Thank you so much for dropping by. Those of you who were able to come by and make it, was really beautiful. Beautiful to see you, a beautiful Purim. And we're picking up where we left off in our shiur and really culminating in a certain sense, really culminating. Thank you so much for coming. Culminating. I guess if you don't have a sheet, you could just look on with one of the yidden that has. And some of them are the final edition, and some of them have a little bit typos, but you'll follow along with us if you don't see where we're reading. So our previous three shiurim were focused on the Nakuda and the sugya of what was called Yichud, Kudsha, Ushchinte, the unification between Kudsha, the transcendent element of Hashem, and then Shchinte, the possibility for us to reveal Hashem through day-to-day life and us trying to draw out the latent godliness within life to unite it with the revealed aspect of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, which is the fundamental purpose of all of our avoda, as we learned at length by Hashem in the last three shiurim. We spoke about Amalek and Purim and that Amalek within, and what it means Yichud Kudsha Shchinte within, and what the period is. That's what we learned last time from the Baal Tanya Schus Yagun Aleinu. So over here, in some way, we're going to culminate that sugya. Really, it's going to take us another 2-3 weeks actually to totally explore this connection. And to anybody joining on Zoom, you have in the chat box the source sheet, so feel free to download them and to follow along with us. But over here, I want to take a look at Kabbalas Shabbos itself. So if you turn the page, before we get to it, but if you turn the page, you'll see that over here we have the 6 kapitlach Tehillim, the 6 chapters of Tehillim that lead up to Lichadodi, obviously corresponding to the 6 days of the week, which culminate in Lichadodi. And you'll see that we have a color-coded kind of system here, which we are going to explore together. So before we take a look at that, let's turn back the page to just review some of these major topics and to provide some foundations. So when we do take a look at the color coding of Kabbalas Shabbos, we have any idea of what we're speaking about. So before we go inside, I just want to draw us outside just for one more minute. We spoke 2 shiurim ago. If you remember from the Degel Machne Ephraim, it was the first source in that particular sheet, where the Degel made reference not only to Kudsha and Shchinte, to the transcendent element, so to speak, and to the immanent element, to the hidden, latent potential for the revelation of Hashem within the world. He made reference to a third spiritual concept, and that was the concept of the tzaddik, if you remember. The concept of the tzaddik, which is the channel that unites the two. So we have these 2 concepts. We have these 2 realities that we can experience, the conceptual understanding of the infinite, Ein Sof, totally transcendent, ultimate, absolute creator, Kudsha Baruch Hu, like we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Kadosh means removed. And then we have our experience of holiness within the physical world. But who's the one that's bringing these 2 together? Who's the conscious being that can relate to this idea of a creator and then reveal that creator within life? That's the tzaddik, and that's the tzaddik within all of us. Va'amich kulam tzaddikim. All of us contain that element of the tzaddik to be able to bring these 2 elements together. We spoke at length about the inyan of the aspect of kol, Kichol bashamayim uva aretz. Shamayim we said is Kudsha Brichu, aretz we said is Shchinte, and the tzaddik is called Yesod. As the pasuk says, v'tzaddik Yesod olam. The tzaddik is the foundation of the world, and we said that Kichol is gematria Yesod, Kichol bashamayim uva aretz. The tzaddik is the one that's unifying these two aspects of heaven on the one hand, earth on the other hand, and all of us do this. All of us have this aspect. But that's going to become very important when we learn. Tonight's shiur is to focus on that middle aspect, so to speak, that's called Yesod. That's called the midah of the bris, because that's exactly what the bris does in the context of male and female. It's the connector, right? And that's what the union of Yesod is. It unites the male transcendent aspect, so to speak. Obviously, we're not speaking in genders. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is beyond Chas v'Shalom, any kind of limitation of any kind. We're using Mishalim. But it's not just mishalim, meaning these concepts manifest in our created reality called male and female. But they have a ruchnius shirish. Where do they come from? They come from this experience of the transcendent male aspect and then the female aspect of Malchus, which can recognize the need to become conscious of Hashem throughout day-to-day life from within a created realm of the world of Malchus, the world of Asiya. And then we have this third element of the bris, which unites the two. And that's the part of the body that's correlating with the midah of Yesod. That's the union of tzaddik. That's why Yosef is called Yosef ha-tzaddik, right? Because he's the master of the bris. He's the one who overcomes that challenge with Eshes Potifar. So he becomes Yosef ha-tzaddik, because tzaddik is connected to the concept of Yesod. And all of us have that ability within our own lives to unite these two elements. And that's the nekuda of bris. And then, just bring you back to one other element within this, what's called the Eitz HaChaim, right, the tree of life, which is the array of the Tiferes. So very quickly, even though we've discussed this a number of times already, we have the aspect of Kesser, right, which relates to the will of Hashem, the highest stage, first step in the creative process. Then we have Chachma, is the holistic big picture thinking on the right, Binah on the left, and that comprises of what's called the moichin, the first three aspects of the way that Hashem reveals himself in the world. Those manifest in the human brain, right? The skull, the cranium is Kesser, right brain, left brain is Chachma and Binah. And then we come down into the days of the week, right? Into the midos, the right hand, left hand, torso, left leg, right leg, left leg, and then the bris, which is Yesod. And then finally Malchus, right? Which is the ultimate culmination, the vessel that receives all the different energies that are coming down through this entire cascade, this chain of emanation. But ultimately, if you remember, we said very deeply that what Malchus is in the midos as the final culmination, the vessel for the lower seven, Binah is to the Moichin, right? It is the third. It is culminative, right? It takes what was given to it by Kesser and Chachma, then it turns downward, so to speak, and it channels Shefa, it channels life force down to the world. And that's why, like we've said, Olam Chesed, true, the world was started, the physical world was started at the sphere of Chesed. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzachai. That's why there are 7 days of the week, 7 continents. And so everything is 7 because the world begins on Sunday with the midah of Chesed. But Yibaneh is the letters of Binah, right? Because it draws on that place of Binah. Binah really is seen as the womb, so to speak, from which creation emerges. Again, all orchestrated, brought into life, given power by HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvodo v'atzmai, the Echad, Yachud u'miyuchad, who's infinitely beyond any level, any power, anything. It's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it's a way that Hashem wanted to let us know about the creative steps he took in creating the world. So we're going to need to have these 4 energies in mind now as we take a look at this piece from the Shari Oira. The first is Binah, which is really, again, that's the womb within which all of this is taking place as creation unfolds. We have the union of Tiferes, right, which is Kudsha B'richu, that aspect of transcendent godliness, the male aspect. We have Yesod, which is the bris, which unites Tiferes with, finally, Malchus, which is the union of the Shechina. Okay, so we have these 4 elements at play in this Yichud, and the Zohar Kadosh tells us that the Yichud between Kudsha B'richu and Shechinte that takes place through the midah of Yesod is orchestrated by Binah. So we have these 4 elements that are at play here in this particular spiritual drama, this experience that takes place within our inner world each and every moment when we're consciously living. So let's take a look at the Shari Oira, and the Tzaddik says like this. He's speaking in the second gate about the second midah from the bottom, right? And so the first midah from the bottom is Malchus, because you're trying to go up. What's the second midah you'll encounter? Yesod. right? So the second gate is all about the midah of Yesod. And the tzaddik says like this, the Rishon. He says, Shabbos is very deeply, of course, connected to Malchus, but it's also very deeply connected to the midah of Yesod, connected to the sphere of Yesod. And he says, it's upon me the obligation to teach us how that is. There he explains. These first three midas, Kesser, Chachma, and Binah, are all wrapped up, like I described, into Binah, right? Because Binah is the culmination of that higher realm. So if you were to ask, well, where did the world begin to unfold from? And the answer is it unfolded from Binah, even though it's true. It was preceded by two spiritual elements, but those two elements are so lofty, Kesser being completely ayin, Chachma sharing in that aspect, because the pasuk says, V'ha me ayin timatzeh, Chachma still shares in that obscure element. Binah is the place where everything begins. Binah, like we learned at length, Mina Dinin Misarin. It's the place where multiplicity begins to and fragmentation begins to emerge, right? From that place of Binah. So rightly says the Shari Oira, we can consider Binah the first sphera, so to speak, within the context of us appreciating how the world unfolded. Binah, we can start the process from Binah. Again, even though it starts two spheres beyond that, we can rightly say that things begin at that realm of Binah, at that place of the womb. Memela, and I'll just say it outside and then we'll read it inside. If things start from Binah, then count with me. Binah, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hoid, Yesod. So from this standpoint, Yesod becomes the seventh day. The seventh day, meaning it's not the seventh day, but Yesod becomes the aspect of seven. And in this sense, Yesod is seen as being deeply, deeply linked to Shabbos Kodesh. Even though, again, really, really, really Malchus is Shabbos. Because if you start from Chesed, which is the normal way to start things, counting from day one, from Sunday is Chesed, Monday is Gevura, Tuesday is Tiferes, Wednesday is Netzach, Thursday is Hoid, Friday is Yesod, and Shabbos is Malchus. That's true. But he's revealing here that you can also accurately start a count from one above, from Binah, in which case Yesod becomes number 7. That's what he's saying over here. And when the spheres are all bound together, meaning when Yesod does its job, so to speak, being the bris of connecting Kudsha, and the whole system connects, this world, the other world, our consciousness is alive and is awake to the fact that there's a creator and that he cares about our lives, right? So it's very practical, even though it sounds very mystical. It's very, very practical. And this is battling against Amalek, as we learned at length in the previous year. When that happens, I'm sorry, right? So then Binah emerges, meaning to say, when we're able to live a life of the Kesser between Shchinte, which is our mundane experience of the physical created world, with the consciousness of the Creator, then Binah begins to emerge. Meaning, then we see how the world really started long before this created realm. We see the spiritual place, right? Beyond this world, beyond 7, it's the number 8, right? It's beyond the world of nature. We understand that there's more to life. That's what comes into our awareness when we live in such a way. Binah emerges. Until it comes down to this level, which is referred to by the Mekubalim as the midah of Kel Chai. And then V'nikre Shabbos, and it is called Shabbos, which is the midah of Yesod. Right? Even though, again, Shabbos is really Malchus. But from this standpoint, understood, when the system connects, we take it one level up. Binah becomes incorporated within the unfolding, and it manifests in the midah of Yesod. And he says this can also be understood, or this can also be seen as an explanation for Hashem creating the world in 6 days and resting on the 7th. Shabbos, who connected Tiferes Yesod. So in this sense, Shabbos, the 7th day, is connected to Yesod, which becomes the 7th midah. Shu Sfiras Kel Chai, v'lefikach nikra Yom HaShabbos Mikar HaBrachos VaKadushos. And he says it's in this sense that Shabbos is called Mikar HaBracha. Because it's difficult to understand. How is Malchus the Makar HaBracha? Malchus is the opposite of Makar HaBracha. Malchus is not a Makar of anything. As we've described, Malchus is a Kli. How could you call it Kli, Makar HaBracha? It is only what it receives from everything beyond it. It's the moon, like we learned, that has no light of its own. It receives the light of the sun. It's the female that's just the Mekabel from what the Mashpia is giving her. How can you call Shabbos the Makar HaBracha? Says the Shari'ira, whenever we refer to Shabbos as the Makar HaBracha, it's referring to Shabbos as correlated not with the Midah of Malchus, but with the Midah of Yesod. Then we can understand it, because the Midah of Yesod is the bris, right? It's what pours forth Shefa. In this sense, it's mamash the Makar HaBracha. The Midah of Yesod, as we're going to see, is called, and we already mentioned this, is called Kol. It's called all, because it itself is the culmination of all the energies above it. It doesn't have a midah on its own. It's like Malchus, but Malchus doesn't have a midah of its own because it receives everything above it. Yesod doesn't have a midah of its own because it gives everything above it. Yesod is mamish the Makar HaBracha. Says the Shari'ara, that's why we refer to Shabbos as the Makar HaBracha, because it is true, it's connected to Malchus, but it is also connected to the midah of Yesod. And very deeply, it is Yesod bound up with Malchus. It is the Yichud between Yesod and Malchus. So therefore, it shares in both of these aspects, as we're going to see, which is why, don't want to give too much, we're going to see it inside. That's why Shabbos has two parts, day and night. And we're going to see that those two are representative of these two energies that manifest within the unified experience of Shabbos Kodesh. But we'll get there in the next paragraph. So he says that's pshat, that Shabbos is called Makar HaBracha. Ka'amro, vayivarech elikim asiyem ashvi, vayikadesh oisei HaKadosh Baruch Hu blessed the seventh day and sanctified the seventh day. Wow, sanctified. Where do you see the Indian of sanctification? What's called Kodesh? Yesod. Yesod is called Kodesh. Bris. Ois, bris, Kodesh. That's what they say by a bris, right? Kol makom sha'ata moitze geder erva, wherever a person sees that a geder was made in the Indian of Tikkun HaBris, ata moitze kedusha. That's where you find the holiness. But what does that mean, al pi pnimius? What's really called Kadosh? Tiferes. Kudsha is called Kadosh. Yesod channels Kudsha. So Yesod can go either way. And as much as a person is working on that Indian of bris, working on trying the best that we can, so you find Kedusha. Not because Yesod in and of itself is an Indian of Kedusha. Yesod is a channel. But in as much as we're clearing that channel, so then is revealed into our lives Kedusha. The Kedusha comes from beyond. It comes from the realm of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the aspect of Tiferes, which is the aspect of the male. And as much as we work on the Inyan of Bris, so then at the Moitze Kedusha, all of a sudden Kedusha is discovered. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is discovered. A channel opens up, ego gets out of the way, the lens becomes clear, and we can see through Yesod, because that's what Yesod is, a channel, to the source of Shefa beyond. So this is what he's referencing over here. Vayavarech Elohim es yom hashvi'i vayikadesh oisai ki vay Shabbos mikol malachta shabar elikim lasos. Shabbos is connected to Kedusha. Shabbos is connected to Bracha, Makar HaBracha. So we find Yom Shabbos Makar Kol HaBrachas V'Hamshachas HaKedusha Lamata. That's what Shabbos is. It draws all the Kedusha down to the lower realms. Vidan, you should know. Very beautiful couple of lines. It's parenthetic. It's not still part of this context so much, but it's a beautiful few lines. And remember, this is a Rishon talking. This is a very old text, even though it speaks very freely and openly, unique to the writings of the Rishonim. This is every word here is midukdak. It's very, very precious. So he says, "V'da, we should know ki adam hashomer Shabbos kalacha, that a person who keeps Shabbos properly, nasa oisai adam k'moy kisei lemerkavel Hashem yisbarach. That person becomes like a chariot for the presence of Hashem. V'lefikach nikra Shabbos menucha." Amazing. He says that's a deeper reason why Shabbos is called menucha. Why is Shabbos called menucha on a simple level? Why do you think Shabbos is called menucha? Pashut level, because you rest from malacha. Either Hashem rested from malacha, therefore we rest from malacha. It's a day of rest. He says no. There's a deeper reason. That's true al pi pshat. He says, you know why it's called menucha? Not that it's the day that we rest or the day that Hashem rested. It is the day upon which Hashem rests. That's a whole different thing. Not that Hashem rested from his work. Shabbos is the day that Hashem rests upon his creation. That's why it's called menucha. It's something else. V'lefikach nikra Shabbos menucha. Uchsev zois menuchasi adei ad. This is my place of rest. Hashem refers to the Makkah of the Beis Hamikdash. Adei ad, forever. Ki ilu, meaning to say, Hashem yizbarach noch al bnei Adam. It's the day that Hashem rests upon each and every member of Am Yisrael, who's keeping Shabbos properly, v'shoichen alav, and dwells within that person's heart, Ken melech al kisai, like a king on his chair, on his chariot, on his throne. The simin, and that's why the pasuk says, "Vayanach b'yom hashvi'i." Again, it could be read in two different ways. On a simple level, it means that Hashem rested from his work on the seventh day. He says, no, Hashem rests on the seventh day. There are two ways of reading. It's not that Hashem rested on the seventh day. Hashem literally rests on the seventh day. The seventh day becomes the throne upon which Hashem rests. It's a different kind of resting. Beautiful. Hu ba'atzmoinach, Hashem himself rests. Nimsa we find, Kol Shomer as Shabbos Kalach, whoever keeps Shabbos properly, keeping Kaim as HaTorah Kula, it's like that person kept the entirety of the Torah. Amar Navi, and the Navi says, Ashrei Enosh Yaseh Zois. Fortunate is the person who does this, Yaseh Zois, which I'll be pneumius, of course, as we're going to see very deeply now in this code of Kabbalas Shabbos, which is a Pella. Zois is a reference always to the sphere of Malchus, right? How do we know? Because the first time that the word Zois shows up in the Torah, who's it a reference to? Very early on in the Torah. Zois, kimi ish lukacha zois. For she was taken from man. It's a reference to Chava, right? Chava is the feminine aspect vis-a-vis the male, which is Adam, right? So the first aspect of feminine, which shows up in the Torah, is referred to by the word zois. Zois is always a reference to the Shechina, right? Zois is the feminine of the word zeh. Zeh is male. Zot, zois is female. That's the aspect of the Shechina. So the pasuk in the reference of referring to Shabbos and the building up of Malchus, meaning the construction of our experience and the physical limited reality to become one of great consciousness, one within which Hashem rests. The pasuk says, Ashrei Enosh, fortunate is the man who ya'aseh zois, who works on this midah of zois, this midah of the Shechina, this midah of turning this world into a mishkan for Hashem. Uben Adam yachzik ba, and the tzaddik, and the person, the tzaddik, yachzik ba, that is encouraging, granting strength to the midah of hey, ba, it, female, feminine. Malchus, shomer Shabbos mechalalai, guarding Shabbos from desecrating it. V'shomer yadam asos kol ra, and guarding one's hand from doing all evil. And the Shari Ira continues a few paragraphs later. There's some of you might not having your sheets because there was a little bit of a typo, so just listen outside just for one paragraph. The Simin Zachar the Yom V'Shama L'Laila says the Heliga Shari Ira, and I made reference to this earlier, that there's a day of Shabbos and there's a night of Shabbos. He says this correlates to Zachar and Shamar. Zachar and Shamar, both of which are said in reference to Shabbos. In one place it says Zachar, and the other place it says Shamar. Luchas Rishon is Luchas Shniyas. Zachar and Shamar, guard and remember, or remember and guard. He says these two refer to these two aspects that manifest within Shabbos by virtue of their Yichud, the aspect of bris and the aspect of the Shechina. How? Zachar and Shamar. Ukisha oisim kach maksiv. When there is a Yichud, when there's a bond between these two aspects of Laila and Yom, Laila, of course, being Malchus, the night, it's the domain of the Levana, it's the place of darkness, the place of the moon, that's Malchus. And then Yom, which is the aspect, of course, of the male, which we already said is connected to the aspect of Tiferes, but it's manifest in Yesod. So that's the Yom. To which correlates Shamar, which is female, guarded, right? Nothing's going out. It's not mashpia, it's makabel. Shamar guards in. And then Zachar, of course, being correlated to male, as the word Zachar is literally Zachar, right? It means male. That's the shirish. So Zachar is Yom. Shamar is Laila. When we bring these two together in this Yichud of Shabbos that we've been learning so much about and so deeply about over the last few months, Maksiv, what happens? The pasuk says in Yeshayahu, I will bring them to my holy mountain, and I will make them joyous, bebeist tfilasi, in the house of my prayer. Har Kudsha, says the Shari Ira Zekel Chai. This is a reference to the midah of Yesod, because Har, as we're going to learn a little bit further down the page, is a reference to Yesod. Har. Whenever you see the word Har, it's a little bit of a code. It's telling you This is the energy of the Midah of Yesod. The whole Torah is a code. As we're literally going to see on the next page, a person can read every single word in the Torah, al pi pshat, what it means. But once we start to understand the code of Torah, you see how every word is really referencing one of these 10 powers, 10 energies, 10 names, 10 aspects, and so on and so forth. And you see how the whole Torah is one. It's a tapestry of energies. It's mamish, the deepest thing to see that. And so we're getting a little taste of that now. Har Kudsha says Zekal Chai. This is the Midah of Yesod. Har is Yesod. And Kudsha, we already said, Kodesh, Kedusha. It's the aspect of Yesod. Base Tfilasi is outside Adni. This is the Shechina. V'avi Yosem al Har Kudsha. This imachtem the base Tfilasi. Base Tfilasi, Beisai, right? Ish u Beisai. Bias is the wife, is the female. Bias is always a reference to the Isha, to the feminine aspect. Tfila is the aspect of feminine. That's why David HaMelech va'ani Tfila. David is the feminine aspect. David HaMelech is Malchus, right? That's all feminine. Zachar, Shamar, Yoim, Laila, V'avi Yosem al Har Kudsha. This imachtem the base Tfilasi. These two things come together. He says that that's Pashit, Zachar and Shamar. But the Gemara says that if a person is Mechal Shabbos Chas v'Shalom, it's like Ilu Kafar be'ikr. Shabbos hu ikra ilan melamata lamalo, because Shabbos is where it all takes place. Shabbos is the essence of Yiddishkeit. Again, if every mitzvah, if every bracha, if every breath that we take, if every word of Gemara that we learn, if everything is Yichud Kudsha Shchinte, and that's literally what Shabbos represents in its format, in its structure, in its concept, in its theory, in its experience, then Shabbos is the maker to break it of Yiddishkeit. Shabbos is where it all happens, where it all takes place. And that's why if a person is Mekayim Shabbos, all the afilu oiv avodah kadar enosh machalon, it's totally wiped clean. Shabbos is called, it's Keneged Taryag Mitzvahs, Shabbos. But Chas v'Shalom, on the other hand, is also true. Kafar be'ikr, because Shabbos is the essence. It's not something tzadi. It's not a side thing. It's the absolute foundation of our tradition, Shabbos, because it is the embodiment of Yichud Kudsha Shchinte, which is exactly what we are attempting to accomplish by becoming tzaddikim, which is the Midah of Yesod, which is here for the purpose of bringing heaven down to earth and earth up to heaven. That's really all there is to it. That's all there is to it. And that's why Shabbos is so powerful and important and integral to the Jewish experience. As the tzaddikim said, more than the Jews kept Shabbos, Shabbos kept the Jews. Shabbos mamish guarded us. Shabbos guarded us, right? Throughout the generations. Because Shabbos is the essence of what it is to be a Yid. Lefisha Shabbos hu ikra ilan, he calls it, the essence of the whole tree. Because otherwise, again, you could have all these wonderful spheres and energies and madregas and levels. But if you don't have the Yichud between Kudsha Bricha and Shchinte, there's pirud. So Malchus, Chas v'Shalom, which is the created world, abides all the way down there at the dregs, at the tough, the last letter, all the way at the end of the Aleph Beis, the place of the Klipa. So it's called Raglei Yerdis Maves, death and darkness, and Kedusha remains all the way up there, but there's no bridge. Shabbos is the bridge. Shabbos allows us to bring the whole system together, to conquer this world for Hashem. That's the Indian of Shabbos. Lefikach, therefore, Nikras Midah Zu. That's why the Midah of Yesod is called Yesod Olam. Like we said, Tzaddik, which is this Midah, is Yesod Olam. It's the foundation of the world. What's the world? It's Malchus. The created world is the level of Malchus, the Shechina, the world of Asiyah. Yesod Olam, on a literal translation, means it is the foundation of the world. Now, we usually think, and that Sha'ar is Marich in a different place. Didn't bring it on the source sheets now, but I'll make reference to it. We usually think that the foundation of a thing, even in Hilchos Shabbos, where's the foundation of a thing? Where's a basis usually positioned? On the bottom, right? Underneath, right? In the physical world, the foundation for a thing is below it. But this is a world where everything is upside down. It's Olam Hafach Re'isi. So from a spiritual sense, the foundations of things are above, right? And that's how it is, spiritually speaking. Everything comes from above, even if it's not directional, but we understand it means transcendent, beyond, right? Beyond, above and beyond. Memela, when we understand what the Midah of Yesod is, we understand that it is Yesod Olam, because the world is underneath it, and it is the branch that links the fruit to the tree. And that terminology is very apropos, going back to how we refer to Shabbos as Chakal Tapuchin Kadishin. It's a field of trees. Why is it a tree? Because Malchus is the apple. The tree is Tiferes. The roots, higher spheres. The branch that's connecting the fruit to the tree, to the trunk, that's Yesod. Yesod is the bridge. And it is above that fruit. It's called Yesod Olam. Keeps it tethered, not below, but above. It's Tzaddik Yesod Olam, ki hu hanoise olav koiches adni. It carries upon it, so to speak, that last midah, which we already know is called Aleph Dal Nun Yud, right? Adni, as opposed to Yud Ke Vav Ke, which we said many times is the midah of Tiferes Kudsha Brichu. Bu ikra mi ikra yediyas Hashem is baruch l'shara samach l'chol hanavram. It is the primary way that we can access the realms beyond. It is hinted to, again, he's just referencing other things he's already said, the lower half of the letter Vav of Yud K, Vav K, because Vav is the 6 midas, and so the very end of the Vav is the midah of Yesod, the very, very bottom of the letter Vav of Yud K, Vav K, and then the final Hey is the midah of Malchus. Kedimyin Yesod mimata lamala. That's the midah of Yesod. For the Fisha Shabbos Yesod Shachas HaKoyach mi asfir salyonis b'shem abni. Because Shabbos is the Yichud of the whole system, so that all the energies in the lower realms are being drawn down, all the way down, so to speak, to the physical world and imbuing this world with energy. Right? Lefisha Shabbos Husaydem Shachas HaKoyach me asfiris halyonis b'shem adni v'husaydis achtus kol asfiris. It is the unification of all the spheres. Kikal chai Noch b'shem adni, because on Shabbos Yesod and Malchus have a unification. But again, Yesod is nothing of its own. The bris, to use pragmatic terms, is not its own conscious being, right? It is part and parcel of the guf, of something that's beyond it, and that's called Tiferes. That's the guf Elam. Yesod is miyachid with Malchus to serve as a channel between Kudsha Brichu and the Shechina. That's what's taking place on Shabbos. That's Shabbos day and Shabbos night. Friday night is the Inyan of Malchus. We're preparing the Kli. And then Shabbos day is the Inyan of Yesod. And that's the Yichud between them, which really culminates at Shalosh Shudas, which is why the third meal is the deepest time of Shabbos. But we'll get to that when we're learning about the Sudas, Be'ezus Hashem. Ki kel chai noch b'shem adni. B'soid vayonach b'yom hashvi. B'soid vayechal elikim. And over here he makes reference to the sphere of Binah, because Binah is referred to by the name Elokim. Elokim is the name that we use to refer to Binah. Elokim is a reference to Binah. Binah is represented by the name Yud Ke Vav Ke with the Nekudas of Elokim. Yud Ke Vav Ke with the Nekudas of Elokim. That's the shame of Binah. That's the name that's correlated to that energy of Binah. And so Elokim refers to Binah. And that's why he says, Vayechal Elokim b'yom hashvi. Because again, what's bringing about this whole Yichud? Binah. Binah is bringing about the whole Yichud. Binah. That's the place where everything begins. We're drawing on that energy, brings together Yesod and Malchus, channeling the sphere of Tiferes. Like we started, these four energies. And Amar Azal, Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu L'Moshe Matana Tova Yesh Li Bebeis Genazai. I have a very sweet gift in my treasure house. The Shabbos Shema, her name is Shabbos. And he writes a litany Yisrael Lech V'Idiyam. Go and tell them. All right. And this, of course, this Gemara is based on a pasuk in this week's parsha in the Aliyah of Shishi. Okay, let's continue very quickly, and then the last half hour we'll spend going through Kabbalas Shabbos together in light of everything that we're learning. That shouldn't take very long, so you don't have to worry. Okay, but let's take a look at this one last paragraph. V'da. Ki bris milah hu sod Shabbos. The inyan of bris milah is also the secret of Shabbos, which is why halachically, when is the bris done? On the 8th day. Why? What's the reason? The Medrash says, why on the 8th day? Because every 8 days must contain a Shabbos. And the only way, says the Medrash, that we can give a child a bris and bring him into the covenant of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov is if he went over a Shabbos in his life. Had to have experienced a Shabbos in this world. That means to tell us there's a very deep relationship between, again, the Inyan, like Shabbos and bris, or shaykhis, these two things have. But al pi pnimius ba'omek, everything is one. And we're able to see the deep, deep interrelated connections between different things that on the surface, beguf, look very disparate. But on the level of neshama, that's the world of Yichud. That's the world of Achdus. On the level of Pnimius HaTorah, wow, the connections are infinite. Even things that on the surface don't look connected at all. Al Pi Pnimius, we see the connections between things. So now, in the context of everything we've been learning, it should become a little bit more clear. Bris Milah is very connected to Shabbos. Because again, Shabbos is the midah of Yesod. Yesod is the place on the body of bris. Tzaddik Yesod Olam. Yosef at Tzaddik, like we've said. The bris that serves as the channel, the branch between the fruit and the tree, between male and female, between Shechina and Kudsha, between sun and moon. That's the midah of Yesod. That's the inyan of bris milah, as he says. Beside Mila upriya. Mila also has two different aspects. There's Mila and Priya. And he puts this together with Zachar and Shamar. Besides Zachar as Yom Shabbos, this Shamar. Zachar liyayim, Shamar lalayla, like we said. Zachar for the day, Shamar for the night. Connected Kelchai Adni, which correlate to these two midas of Kelchai, which is the midah of Yesod, the bris, and then Adni, which is the midah of Malchus. And that's why it's called a bris, literally, because bris means a covenant, and a covenant is the bringing together of two aspects, which is exactly what's happening when we have a Yichud of Kudsha. That's why it's called a bris, because it forges a connection between two disparate elements. In this case, or in the most elemental case, Kudsha and Shchinte. In the embodied form, male and female, which is, of course, why Talmidei Chachamim are Meshamash Mitasam from Leilei Shabbos to Leilei Shabbos. Why is Shabbos the time for that? Now we understand, because Al Pi Pnimius, that's all that's happening in the world, is a great existential yichud, of which we serve as the Merkava, husbands and wives. Very, very deep. So here he says, this is the connection between Mila and Priya to Shamar and Zachar. Amar HaKasuv, if it wasn't for my bris, yoimam v'layla, chukos shamayim va'aretz loisam. Like, how did we read this pasuk before knowing all this? Listen to the way he reads this pasuk. It's Pillei Playim. Imloi brisi yoimam v'layla. If it were not for my bris of day and night, what shaykh is day and night to bris? What are you talking about? So on a simple level, it means the Torah, and it means the Yisa B'Yayim V'Layla, learning. So if people aren't learning the whole day, it's not the Torah. All true. Nefesh HaChaim, Shar Dalet, any other tzaddikim, this is true. I'll be pshat. But let's go deep. Let's go beyond the surface. Yoim V'Layla is already the inyan of Kudsha B'Richu and Shchinte, of Malchus, Friday night, it's the inyan of Shamar, and Shabbos day, which is the inyan of Yesod, which is the inyan of Zachar. Now, Brisi becomes very connected to Yom V'Layla because those two things need to be bridged. Brisi Yom V'Layla. If heaven and earth are not, if day and night, we're going to have to heaven and earth in a minute. If day and night are not being bridged, Zachar and Shamar are not being bridged, sun and moon are not being bridged, male and female are not being bridged, Tiferes and Malchus are not being bridged, Kudsha is all the same thing I'm saying. Kudsha and Shchinte are not being bridged, it's different words. Then Chukos Shamayim Va'aretz Loisamti. Then the chukais, which literally means the laws of Shamayim and Aretz, another reference to these two elements. Hashamayim, like we said, Shamayim Lashem, that's Tiferes. Aretz Nasan Lamnei Adam, this is Malchus. Chukais Shamayim Va'aretz Loisamti. There's no law that's binding these two things together. Imle Brisi. If these two things are not being bridged by means of the midah of Yesod. Very, very amazing. What's chukais? Beside chukais, in Kelchai Adni. What is chukais? What are these two laws? He says these two midas, Kelchai and Adni, are called chukais. Beside chak, the chukah. Besimin es chukaisai tishmayr. What are these two chukais? Yesod and Malchus. Chayk is called bris. And these two elements are referred to by the bris. They're the two elements of the bris. Even Al Pi Kabbalah, just again, the bris itself is called Yesod, and the atara of the bris that's revealed through Mila is called Malchus. The bris itself contains both of these elements. It's called a chukah. Chayk and chukah. Chayk is Yesod, chukah is Malchus. This is called chukais, which is Shamayim Va'aretz Leisamti. Again, just reviewing, this bris between day and night is the side of Mila and Priya. Mila being the night, the day, Priya being the night, Zachar being the day, Shamar being the night, Kelchai, Yesod being the day, Adni, Malchus being the night. Torah Shabbat V'Torah Shabbat Peh, he throws on another one. Torah Shabbat, the written Torah and the oral Torah, same thing. Same side, chuka shamayim va'aretz. Zeh keneged zeh. Same thing. V'zeh side, u'v'soyroi sai. In my Torahs, yehege, again, yoimam v'layla, because Torah itself contains these two aspects, alpi pnimius. Torah shabiksav is the day. It's the aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu, whose face was like the face of the shemesh, which shines during the day. And then Torah Shabbat Peh is for night. The Gemara says, Le'ivri layla edel girsa. Night was only created for the study of Torah Shabbat Peh. So in of Yeshua, Pnei Yeshua Kepnei Levana. Yeshua is Lun Be'emek, says the Gemara Megillah, Lun Be'umka Shel Halacha. That's the Indian of Malchus, Halacha. So the Indian, which is Oisios Hakala. Actually, in the beginning of Parak Arvi Psachim, as we start to prepare for Pesach, so right in the beginning over there, one of the Mayram wants to paskin halacha and with relation to stopping to eat, getting close to Pesach. They had already been eating the Suda, Parasmatpa, and so on and so forth. And he uses this terminology when he wants to paskin like the other Amayra Haga from the Megillah, which is very beautiful because obviously the Megillah was on their mind, right? They had just come out of Purim. So he says, "Agam lichvash as amalka yimi babayis." What are you like? Ki'ilu, and the Rashbam says, "You're embarrassing me to paskin like that, to paskin like this other Amayra. I'm sitting here. Agam lichvash as amalka yimi baba. I'm sitting here, you're not paskining like me." So on a simple level, it means what it says, right? He's borrowing a terminology. Don't embarrass me, like Haman Ki'ilu was embarrassing Achashverosh by accosting Esther. But Al Pi Pnimius, he used a very miduyak language, like a very specific, precise language, because halacha, which is what he's referring to, is mamish hamalka, is mamish the Indian of the malka, of the queen. Of again, halacha is oisias hakala, right? Which is the Indian of the feminine, which is the Indian of Malchus. So he literally wasn't just using this pasuk, he was literally referring to the fact that you're not paskening halacha like me. What's halacha? Is hakala. Halacha is Malchus. Hagam lichbash is hamalka, imi babai is malka, is the Indian of Malchus, is the Indian of Yeshua, Pnei Yeshua, Pnei Levana, Yeshua, lon be'emek, be'umka shal halacha. That's the Indian of Torah Shabbat Peh. V'zeh side of Torah yegayam v'layla yamim with Torah Shabbat side kalchai, side zachar, side mila. Rather, Mila is the Indian of Kalchai. Laila, who's side Torah Shabbat Peh, side Aleph Dal Nun Yud, side Shamar, side Priya. And then finally, and then we'll get into Kabbalas Shabbos now. One last line, Da, which I made reference to earlier, Ki Amida Hazois, should say Hazois, HaNikris Kalchai, Nikris B'Torah Hart Sion. This Mida is called in the Torah Hart Sion. Sion is Gematria Yosef. Yosef is Tzadik Yesod Olam. That's the Indian of Yosef HaTzadik. That refers to the Midah of Yesod. That's Har Tzion. Umidas Adni is referred to whenever we see Har Hamayriya is referring to the Midah of Malchus. One Mamish last line. Going into the Shari Oira, the first gate, which speaks about the Midah of Malchus. Sometimes one last little code word, Malchus is referred to by the word Yam. Yam. Mamish an ocean. Why do you think it's called a yam? The pasuk that he's about to quote, right? We'll just read it inside. And the reason is because all the energies above, again, Malchus is the receptacle. It's the kli. It's the final midah. It's the site of Shabbos. It's the site of the levana that has no light of its own. It receives the light from the sun. So about this place, the pasuk says, Kol hanachalim holchim el hayam. All the streams of all the upper realms flow down to what? To the Yam. The Yam is a reference to Malchus. And again, if you remember in an earlier shiur, and we even hinted to it in the beginning of this shiur, what Malchus is in the Midas, Binah is in the Moichin, right? Both the end of the respective systems. And that's why Binah is referred to by the word mi. Not to complicate things, just throwing this out there. Malchus is Yam, Binah is the flip, is mi. And that's why there are 50 gates of Binah, because mi is Gematria. 50, of course. And that's me. That's the Chamishim Shari Binah. Fine. Now let's go into Kabbalas Shabbos with all of this in mind. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit of the code before we start to look at it. And I guarantee you shall never look at Kabbalas Shabbos again the same way, because I can't unsee this. And this is actually going to be useful. And hopefully I'll tuck it away in my Shabbos soup packet and take it with me to shul. But very, very quickly before we go into it, just the colors. First of all, the colors are non-specific, right? The spheres do have colors that are associated with them. I didn't choose to use those colors. It happens to be that for these four meters, the colors are pretty bland. It's like black is Malchus, brown is Yesod, and then like two different shades of green are Binah. It didn't work. So I chose to use colors that are more bolet, but they're not Kabbalistically significant in this context. I used red for any word that's a code for Malchus. I used purple for the words that are code for Yesod. I used green for the words that are a reference to Tiferes. Right? Again, all these midas that are being miyuchad, that are having integration on this day of Shabbos, during Kabbalas Shabbos, as we've learned at length from Chanina, Rabbi Yanai, the whole thing, right? And I used finally the color blue for a reference to Binah. So now just read with me. I'm telling you, we're not even going to do this very deeply. We're just gonna read through Kabbalas Shabbos together with this new Havana. Let's begin. Not translating. I'm just going to point out when necessary what their references to. Let's try to do this quickly. I tried to take out all Yud Kivav case, but I missed the first one. Okay, I don't want Seamus, but now it is Seamus. Fine. Hashem. Yud Kevav Ke is always a reference to Tiferes. Kikal Gadol Hashem. Umelech Gadol, Melech is Malchus. Gadol, Malchus grows to become very strong and mighty on Shabbos. Al, well, where does that happen from? Kol, which is a reference to Yesod. Elokim, which is a reference to Binah. Right, so Melech Gadol, how does that happen that Malchus becomes Gadol on Shabbos? Kol, because of the Midah of Yesod, which again is orchestrated by the Midah of Elokim. Why a reference to Harim? Because like we said, Har Tzion is Yesod, Har Maria is Yerushalayim. Harim loy. Harim over here is the reference to these two midas that are miyucha together. Asher loy hayam, because to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the yam. What's the yam is Malchus. Who asahu. Asahu is also a reference to Malchus because it's the world of Asiya. But who asahu? This yam. Yabesh is Yadavitzaro. Boy, and I'm sure there are many words that I'm missing here. I just, off the top of my head, what I saw, I bolded. Boy, come and bow down. Nivracha. Bracha is always related to the midah of Malchus, Lefnei Havaya Yud Kevavke Oisenu, who is the one that institutes, so to speak, and creates and brings into being the realm of Malchus. Ki hu alikenu, that's a reference to Binah. Va'anachnu amarisa v'tzan yadai. Hayayim. Hayayim. Day. Day is the Shemesh. Day is the midah of Tiferes. Im bekoiloi tishma'u. Remember we spoke very deeply about Malchus being speech and Tiferes being kol, being voice. That's the midah of Yaakov Avinu, vis-a-vis the midah of David HaMelech. Hakol kol Yaakov. Hayoim im bekoiloi tishma'u. Al tak shalavavachem k'meriva ki'emasa ba'midbar. Midbar is always a reference to Malchus. Hashanisuni aviseichem echanunagam ra'ofali. Which is a little bit challenging to read this Friday night, to learn that Hashem got angry, that we tested HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the midbar. Well, Aymar and Hashem says, I'm toy lev of him. Why are we bringing this up? Because this is exactly what Shabbos comes to fix. In the midbar, we lived in the world of Malchus that can, like we learned in our earliest shiur in this series, this world can be seen either as a Malchus to Kedusha, meaning a Malchus de Kedusha, doesn't just mean a Malchus that is sanctified and holy, but a Malchus that's bound up with Kedusha, Kedusha being the midah of Yesod as it opens up to Tiferes, right, which is a Kadosh Baruch Hu, or it could be a Malchus, a Sitra Achra. And this is how they lived in the midbar, Chas v'shalom, disconnected from Hashem, rebelling, trying to live a life of dissonance, of separateness from Hashem. And so we're pointing out what the pegam is so that we know what to fix. Says Hashem, Am toy leiv of him. They were a nation where their hearts were astray. But what is the heart? Leiv is a reference always to Malchus. Am toy leiv of him. Vehem lo yadu derachai, and they did not know my ways. Ways, derech, is always a reference to Yesod. Derech. Derech ish is to lachzar achra isha. There's a pasuk that slipped my mind right now, but derech is always a reference to the inyan of Yichud between a husband and a wife. Derech, and the Sha'ar says derech is a reference to Yesod. So they didn't know that. There was no connection between Yesod and Malchus in that time and in that place. So then Hashem says, wow, if there's such an obstacle, so then im yevayin el menuchasi, I shall not be coming down, so to speak, to descend into the lower realms of menuchasi, which is Beautiful. Precious derech eretz. Beautiful. And precious is the Indian of Kedushas Yesod. Beautiful. Derech is right. Derech eretz. Derech is Yesod. Eretz is Malchus. Derech eretz. Yes. Okay, next thing. Shiur Lashem, shiur Chadash. Again, we're trying to go ahead and to open ourselves up to this level of the transcendent during Kabbalas Shabbos. Shiur Lahavaya, Yudke Vavke. Shiur Chadash. It should be bold over here. Chadash is a reference to Malchus. Chodesh is the aspect of the Levana. It's Mechadash itself all the time. New energies flowing in. And so how do we sing a new song to Hashem? It's the shiur of Chadash, of Malchus. Shiur LaHashem. How do we sing to Hashem? Simple. Kol, which is the midah of Yesod. Haaretz, which is the midah of Malchus. So literally in those three words, you have the whole thing. LaHashem, Kol, Haaretz. Right? We're bringing together Hashem and Aretz being a reference to Malchus. How? Through the midah of Kol. Shiur LaHashem, sing to Hashem, Yud Kevavke, Baruch Hu Shemai. Baruch Hu. Like we said, Bracha is the midah of Malchus. Shemai is the midah of Malchus, as we've learned in previous shiurim, that's what it means. L'shem Shemayim. Shem, we said, is Malchus. Shemayim, like we said, is Tiferes. L'shem Shemayim is to bring these two things together. Same thing here. Baruch Hu Shemai. When we shiur LaHashem and we're living consciously through our song, through our awareness of this aspect of Kudsha B'richu, beyond, so to speak, our lived day-to-day experience, what happens? Baruch Hu Shemai, then Malchus becomes blessed. It becomes a channel, a receptacle for the bracha that's flowing through your side. Basru miyoim liyoim yeshu asay. Possible to suggest that this is a reference to the Tikkun HaShalim, when there's not just going to be one yoim and a laila, but there's only going to be yoim. La'ased lave, what does the pasuk say? Vayu ar alavana ki ar hachama, right? The light of the moon will mamish be the light of the sun itself. There will be two suns. Shnei malachim, yes. Misham shem Kesser echad. La'ased lava. Yud K, like we learned, it's not going to be Yud K Vav K anymore. It's going to be Yud K. B'yaymahu yihyeh Hashem echad. U'shmei echad. Yud K. You're saying mashu lo yayim v'lo laila. Huh? Yes, Karev Yayim. Yeah, that's a little bit different. Mashu lo yayim v'lo laila. So that's mamish a reference to the bittul of everything. Right, but over here we're saying in context of the pasuk Yeshayahu that Allah said, "Love, there's not going to be a levana and a shemesh. There's going to be two levanas. Or a levana karachama basru miyayim liyayim Yeshua said there's going to be 2 days, day and day. This is a reference to the tikkun of Malchus. Sapru bagoyim kevoidai. Sapru means to tell over. Tell over is dibur. Dibur is Malchus. Bagoyim kevoidai. Kavod is always Malchus. Baruch shame. Baruch is Malchus. Shame is Malchus. Kvoid is Malchus. Malchus is Malchus. La'olam vay. All those 4 words are all kinuyim. It's all one. If you start to see it, you see the code, and you can understand the interconnectivity between words and psukim and concepts. It's a different level of Torah, right? So sapru b'goyim kavayda b'chala amim nifla of Malchus, like we learn, is soif maaseh b'machshavat chila. Malchus reflects the earliest ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ritzaynenu, our experience of Ratzon in this lowly realm of Malchus is Lasais Ritzaynecha, is to manifest your desire. Hashem's desire is on the level of Kesser, and that's called Pele. Pele is always called Kesser. Kesser is called Pele. Nifla Isaf. We can experience Hashem's Kesser as manifest in the lowly realm of Malchus on Shabbos. Ki Gadol Hashem. Again, Yud Ke Vav Ke becomes revealed when Umehula Ma'oid. Ma'oid is a reference to Malchus. Mehula Ma'oid. Ma'oid is Sitra de Moisa. Ma'oid is referred to in the Zohar Kodesh, as the pasuk says, Vayar Hashem, Toiv is good. Toiv Ma'oid, that's already the Sitra Achra. Ma'oid is the Sitra de Moisa. That's a reference to Malchus, Ragla Yardis Maves. Ma'oid is the extraneous. Ma'oid is the Kli. It's what's beyond the system. It's what needs to be filled because it exists, so to speak, outside of city limits. And the Rishus HaRabim. Umuhula Ma'oid. When even the Ma'oid begins to sing, okay, then Gadol Hashem. You see the way that Yud Kevavke is so great, that level kiviyachol, that it's able to even shine a light within our experience. Noirahu. How does it become so great? I'll call because Yesod Elokim, and that's being again orchestrated by Binah. Ki kol Elokei Amim Elilim, B'Vahashem Shamayim, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is Tiferes. Shamayim, which is the aspect, like we learned, of Shamayim. Asa has come down to reveal his energy kiviyachol in the world of Asiya. Hashem Shamayim. Asa. Havula Hashem, come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, give to Hashem. What should we give to Hashem? Kavod Shemai. What's Kavod Shemai? Is the world of Malchus. Kavod is Malchus. Shemai is Malchus. Su mincho v'oil chatzayisrav. Hishtach v'lavaya. Missed another one. Bahadras Kodesh. Reference to Yesod. Chilu mi panav. Kol haaretz. What trembles before this midah of Yud Kei Vav Kei? Kol Yesod haaretz Malchus. Su'u minchova, right? Kol haaretz. Imru bagayim. Let it be said in the nations of the world. What's Imru? Malchus, Dibur, Hashem Malach. Yud Kei Vav Kei has come down to be miyachid with Melech, with Malchus. Avtikun teva baltimad yodav amin b'mesharim. Yismucha Hashem. Here's the famous passage. Yismucha Hashemayim. And therefore let the heavens rejoice. The heavens is the levels of Tiferes. V'sagel ha'aretz. And when that happens, v'sagel ha'aretz. We already said that this is Rosh Hashanah's Yud Kei, which is Yismucha Hashemayim. V'sagel ha'aretz is Vav Kei, is the lower realms. Yiram hayam u'maloi. What trembles? The ocean, the sea trembles. What's the sea? We already said. It's Malchus, Umaloi, and everything in it. Ya'aloi Sadai. Sadai is the Isios. Shakai. Shakai is the Midah of Yesod. Shakai is the name that correlates to the Midah of Yesod. Ya'aloi Sadai, or you can learn Sadai as a reference to Malchus, the state Tapuchim, which is a field. V'chol, Sadai v'chol. Kol again is the Midah of Yesod. Asher boy, everything that is within him, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Az Yiranu Kal Atze Ya'ar, and then all the trees in the field is Malchus, begin to sing. Lefnei Hashem, again, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Kiva Lishbait Ha'aretz. The Indian of Mishpat is connected to Tiferes, right? Mishpat Lalekei Yaakov. Mishpat is connected to Tiferes. Lishbait Ha'aretz, right? Yud Kei Vav Kei has become bound with Ha'aretz, Malchus. Yishbait, Tiferes. Tevel is the earth, Malchus. Be Tzedek, through Tzedek. What's called Tzedek? We learned in a previous year. Yesod is called Tzedek. Yesod is, Malchus is called Tzedek. Yesod is called Tzedek. Malchus is called Tzedek. So it should really be read. Table but Tzedek. The Amim be Emunasai. Emunah is a reference to Malchus always. The next paragraph, Hashem Malach Tagel Aretz. Again, Yud Kei Vav Kei Malach comes below, so to speak, is united with the lower realms, Malach, Malchus, Tagel Haaretz, and the entire world rejoices. But the earth, which is a reference to Malchus, Yismuchim Rabim, Anabral Svivav, Tzedek u'mishpat mechoin kisai. Tzedek, Malchus, u'mishpat, Tiferes, mechoin kisai. This world becomes the chair, like we learned for Hashem. Hashem is Vayonach, Bayem Hashvi. Hashem rests on this day, on it. Right? What trembled? Haaretz, Malchus. Harim, again, Harim is Yesod and Malchus. Kadoinag nemasu, but over here we're referring to the other kinds of mountains that are connected, Yesod and Malchus. In the Klipa, they melt away. Milifnei Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Milifnei Adoin, it's the union of Adni, Malchus, Kol, Yesod, Haaretz, Malchus. Higidu Hashamayim Sidkoi. Let the heavens, which is the aspect of Yud Kei Vav Kei Tiferes, enter into the element of Sidkoi. Sidkoi is the Tzaddik. Tzaddik is Tzaddik Yesod. Olam is the aspect of Yesod. V'ro Chol Ha'amim. And through the midah of Chol, let all the nations see what? Kivoidai, which is the revelation of Hashem's presence in Malchus. Yivoishu Kol Evdei Pesach L'Masalam Elidim Eshtachvu Loi to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vav Tiferes. Kol Yesod. How does this happen? Again, Elokim. Shama v'tismach Tzion. Tzion, we said, is Gematria. Yosef. Tzion is the Indian of Yesod. Vatagelna benois Yehuda. Benois is feminine. That's Malchus. Yehuda is Mamish David HaMelech. It's the Indian of Malchus. Leman mishpatecha Hashem. Doesn't get more mavur than this. Literally, it's mafurish in this pasuk. Shama v'tismach Tzion. Yesod. Vatagelna b'rais Yehuda, Malchus. For what purpose? Why? What's happening here in this Yichud? L'man mishpatecha Yud Kei Vav Kei, because of Tiferes. Ki ata is a reference to Tiferes. Yud Kei Vav Kei Elyon, like we said in previous year. Elyon is Binah. Al Kol Yesod Haaretz, the earth. Ma'oid na'alesa Al Kol Yesod. Again, Elokim, a reference to Binah. Oyave Hashem sinura shemenavshis chasid miyad Hashem atzilim arza ruah la tzadik. Tzadik is the Indian of Yesod. Uli yishrei leiv simcha, and that brings the leiv to life. The leiv is Malchus. Simchu tzadikim is the Indian of Yesod. Ba'Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei v'haidu lezecher Kudsha. Zecher is always a reference to Malchus. Zecher tzadik livracha. Zecher and tzadik are bound together very deeply. Livracha for Malchus. Kudsha, like we said, is already the Indian of the Inyan of Yesod. Mizmar Shir La Hashem Shir Chadash. Again, Chadash is Malchus. Kineflaois is the Inyan of Kesser. Asa comes down into the world of Asiya. Hoshiyali Amina Zora Kacha. Idia Hashem Yeshua Asa Yud Kevavke. Tiferes Le'ini Agoyim Gila Sid Kasai. Again, Sid Kasai, the Mid of Yesod, is a revelation on Shabbos of the Bris, which is the connection between heaven and earth. Gila Sid Kasai. Zachar. Should be Zachar is Yesod. Chazde ve'emunasai. Missed one again. Emunasai is Malchus. Leveis Yisrael. Base is Malchus. Ra'u kol Yesod. Afse Eretz. All those living in the Eretz. Malchus. Eis Yeshuas Elokeinu. Elokeinu is Binah. Hariu la Hashem. Kol ha'aretz. Again, la Hashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei Tiferes. Kol is Yesod. Ha'aretz is Malchus. Pitzchu v'ranan v'zameru. Zamar la Hashem bechinar. Bechinar. V'kol zimra. Kol. Kol Yaakov, Inyan of Tiferes. B'chatzoid source v'kol shofar. Hariu lefnei Hamelech Hashem. Wow, Hamelech Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei is manifest in Melech. There's a Yichud Kudsha and Shchinte on Shabbos. Yiram Hayam Umalaya. Again, a reference to the Yam, which is Malchus. Table, the earth. Malchus. V'yoshvei ba behei. Malchus, Narasim, Chau, Chaf, and all the rivers, which now we understand being a reference to all the higher elements of the sphere, Sim, Chau, Chaf, Yachad, Harim, Yeranenu, Yesod and Malchus prance together, they dance together, they're bound together, Lifnei Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei Kiba, again, Lishbait Haaretz, Aretz is Malchus, Lishbait, Mishpat, Yud Kei Vav Kei Tiferes. Yishbait again, table b'tzedek va'amim b'meisharim, and come to the end. Hashem Malach, Yirgezu Amim, Yoshev Kerubim Tanat Haaretz. Hashem Malach, again, these infinite words. Hashem Malach, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Malach is Malchus. Yoshev Kerubim, what are the Kerubim? Male and female. Tiferes and Malchus, right? These two things are bound together, husband and wife. That's the Keruvim. Yichud Kudsha Shchinte Tanat Haaretz is Malchus. Hashem B'tzion Gadol. Tzion is a reference to Yesod, Gadol, they become big. Shimcha, again, is the aspect of Hashem's name. Hashem's name is a reference always to Malchus. L'shakin Shmoi Shama. Shmoi is connected to Shechina. Kadosh, who is a reference to Kesser, but Kadosh is Yesod. V'oiz is a reference to Yesod. Oiz, Boyaz, Boy Oiz, Boy Tukva. Oiz is a reference to Yesod. Melech, Mishpat Ohev. Melech is Malchus. Mishpat is Tiferes. Ata, Tiferes, Konanta Meshara, Mishpat, Tiferes, Utstaka, Malchus, B'Yakov, Ata, Asisa. B'Yakov, the Inyan of Kol Yaakov, Tiferes, Ata, again, becomes bound with Asisa. Roim Mo Hashem Elokeinu v'shach v'la raglov, la'adayim raglov, Kadoshu. Moshe v'Aaron v'Chayana v'Shmuel b'Kor Shemai Koyim al Hashem, v'Hu Yanim, ba'amad anin edaber aleim, Shamru Eidosav, Shamru we said is Shamar, as opposed to Zachar. That's the Inyan of Malchus. The Chayk, what's the Chayk? We already learned. Chuka Shemayim Ba'aretz Lisamti, Chayk Nasan Lama is the reference to Bris, as a reference to Yesod. Hashem Elokeinu. Ata Nisam Kel, and I say Yisrael Menachem Al-Lisam, Roimu Avai Elokeinu, V'ishtachavu, Lahar Kodshay. Har Kodshay is Tiferes. Ki Kadosh. I'm sorry, right? Har Kodshay is the Inyan of Yesod, Ki Kadosh Havaya Elokeinu, because transcendent is Havaya Elokeinu. And then finally, the last Mizmar, with this will end for tonight. Mizmar LeDavid. David is Malchus. Havu La Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei Tiferes B'nei Elim. Havu La Hashem, Kavod Va'oiz. La Hashem is Tiferes, Kavod is Malchus, Oiz is Yesod. Again, these three words in quick succession are these three elements, the two things that are being bound together and the midah that is binding them together. Havu La Hashem, Kvod Shemai. Again, two references to Malchus right after Yud Kei Vav Kei. Hishtachavu La Hashem, Bahadras Kodesh. Kodesh is Yesod. Kol Hashem Alamayim. Again, we're going to see a lot of Kol Hashem. It is the aspect of Tiferes. Kel HaKavod Hirim. And then in response, Kel HaKavod is the Inyan of Malchus. Hashem al Mayim Rabim, on the waters of this Yam of Malchus. Kol Hashem HaKoyach, Kol Hashem. Bahadar, Kol Hashem, Sheva Arazim, Shabbos Hashem is missing some words, as Arzi Alavana, Ve'arkedim, Kamay Egel Lavana, Vesiri, Kamay Benu Eimim, is missing a bunch of words. Kol Hashem Bahadar, Kol Hashem Sheva, it got messed up a little bit, okay? Kol Hashem Choytzav Lavis Eish, Kol Hashem Yachol Midbar, Midbar is Malchus, it trembles. Yachel Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Kudsha Midbar, Malchus. How? Because Kadesh, because of Yesod that binds them together. Kol Hashem Yechoy Lala Yolos, V'yechzev Ya'aros, Uve Heichaloi. Heichal is another reference to Malchus. Heichal is Gematria Aleph Dal Nun Yud, which is Malchus. Heichal is Adni. In that place of Heichal, Adni, Kuloi Omer. All they do there is dibur, speech, meaning the kol of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is Tiferes, becomes channeled through Uvehechalei Kulei Aimer, and therefore produces kavod, the presence of Hashem in this world. Hashem Lamal Yashav, Vayeshev Hashem Melech La'olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is flooding this world on Shabbos with Shefa, Mabel Yashav. Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, will be revealed as being the Melech on this earth. Finally, we end Hashem Oiz la'amayite. And how does this happen? Because Yud Kei Vav Kei reveals himself through the midah of Yesod, through the tzaddik within, through the midah of bris. Hashem Yivarech Malchus es amoy bashalom. Shalom is also a reference to Yesod. And so just very quick, we did this very quickly. Take it home with you. You can use it Friday night. To be mizbainin a little bit, it's literally, you can't make this stuff up. The chances of this just happening by coincidence, that there are all these references, one after the other, it's saturated. There's more colorful words here than black words, right? All of it is a code to what's taking place in the spiritual realm during Kabbalas Shabbos. And if we're able to be conscious of this as we're davening Kabbalas Shabbos, so then we can remember what's supposed to be happening, what we're supposed to be feeling, how we can bring about a unification in all the worlds through our avodah on Kabbalas Shabbos. Kadosh Baruch Hu should bless us that we should recognize what Shabbos is and how integral it is to our Yiddishkeit, how integral it is to framing our avodah in this world. What are we here for? What are we trying to accomplish? What does it mean we have a tzaddik inside? What is that tzaddik? What is my job in this world? I'm here to become, and you're here to become, and all of us are here to become this hallowed channel, so to speak, that serves this mission of bringing heaven down to earth up to heaven, by letting Hashem in to all of our lowly experiences, our struggles, our challenges, our regular mundane experiences, when we're able to recognize that Hashem Malach, Yud Kei Vav Kei, transcendent, is channeled down into the mundanity of our day-to-day lives, the Shechina. So then there's a little bit of a taste of the Yichud HaShalom, and Shabbos can give us that kind of taste of La'asad Lavai, of the Yom Shekula Shabbos. We should be zeicha to live with intention, consciously. But as Hashem Yisbarach, Hashakayach. Thank you so much. Hashakayach Hashreinu. Okay. Thank you so much for joining. To everybody on the Zoom, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you got the sheets. Whoever's here, you can download them, print them out. You can use them Friday night. Be'ezus Hashem. Yashukah. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Kol tov. Anybody has any questions? Wants to share anything? Chiddush?
About the cause of this year once you post it. Didn't get a chance to.
Be'ezus Hashem. Same. Unfortunately, we're not going to be doing singing because I have to run, unfortunately, already, and the rest of the chaver as well tonight. So, Be'ezus Hashem will carry on next time with the singing. We'll sing double. Okay, have a beautiful, beautiful Shabbos to everybody. Kol tov. Shabbos, good Shabbos.